Welcome to What We See, conversations across indie education with microschools, homeschool families, and hybrid programs about what they're actually doing, how they know it's working, and what the metrics miss. I'm here with Jill Haskins from Kainos Microschool in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Thanks for joining me for another What We See conversation, Jill.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, cool. So, as we typically do, can you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got here? I'd like to just understand like what are the moments that triggered or catalyzed or influenced you to now at this point in time be a microschool founder and of a growing microschool.
Yeah. I am a former public educator. I taught in the local public school district for just a couple of years. And that was back in 2007 to 2009-ish when, the economy tanked and got the pink slip. Um, but I also knew that I wasn't going to stay in public education for a long time. My husband and I started having a family, and I was spending more time with other people's children than my own. And working in an inner city school, it was just really, really difficult. So I became a stay-at-home mom for a while. Had kind of figured that my teaching career was over. And I assumed I was never probably going to be teaching ever again. And my husband and I also, we both grew up in public school, graduated from public school. He has some family, some extended family that had homeschooled, back in the 90s. It was an interesting experience for him to kind of watch from the outside. So he had also kind of taken the stance of like, we're never going to homeschool our kids. They're going to go to public school, and that's that. And I was like, great, perfect. My husband works retail, so very early on in our marriage, working a lot of nights and weekends. And so as our kids were getting older, and starting school in the public school, they weren't seeing their dad at all because he's working nights and weekends. And so it became evident really quickly that we needed to make a change for our family to be able to function as a healthy family. And so, when you say that you're never going to do something ever, sometimes that ends up coming true. So we decided to just give homeschooling a try for 1 year, was what we said we were going to do. So we pulled our two older kids out of public school, and I began homeschooling. And it was life-changing for our family. It was, everything that we needed. We had the flexibility of our schedule. We could take vacations, during off season, so it was cheaper. And it was just really, honestly, some of the sweetest times of our life. So that was great. When my youngest son turned 7, I knew very quickly that he needed to not be homeschooled. He is the baby. He's a baby after a significant loss of his older brother. And we just knew very quickly that he was not going to get a good quality education if he was with me. So we began looking for some other options, but also like the scheduling and stuff was not, we needed a non-traditional schedule because of my husband's work schedule. So I found someone who had kind of been homeschooling other children in her home for like 30 years and just a handful of kids in her home. And so we registered him there, and it was significant for us as a single income family to make that work, but it was worth it to us to make the investment. So we enrolled him there. I had also kind of begun wondering if he had some learning differences. But he was still so young. He was 7, and I was like, well, he's a 7-year-old boy, and he's the baby. He can manipulate me, so we'll see how he does there. And he did start to make some improvement, but not a ton. And then COVID hit, and so we brought him home. And after about 3 months, I was like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work. During that time, she had moved her micro school over to her church, and they had started a micro school there. We didn't know it was a micro school at the time. It was just this weird thing that they were doing in this church.
Right.
And so I called her up and I
Turns
was
out
like,
that, yeah.
"Hey, do you have some room for an extra student?" And she was like, "Yeah, we do." And I was like, "Also, I have these other two kids that I'm like homeschooling, and I'd love to continue to be involved with what he's doing. Are you looking for a teacher at all?" And they were like, "Actually, you have been on our mind. We want you to come." So I started at that micro school in 2021 as a teacher, and moved into executive director of that school. And I was there for 5 years, and it was wonderful. When we first started, it was a non-accredited, non-public school in Indiana, which is kind of on the same thing as homeschool. And yet I had questions. I was like, is what we're doing legal? Is how we're doing it okay? Like, what is this thing? So I started kind of Googling like modern one-room schoolhouse question mark. I don't know. What is this thing? And was looking locally for other people that were doing weird things as well. And I found a couple other schools in Indiana, but the term microschool popped up, and I was like, oh, that's what we are. So began getting involved in the national movement, started the Indiana Microschool Network, and started that from about 6 microschools. There's about 90 or so in operation now in Indiana alone, which is super exciting. So I've kind of built that network out. When I left that former micro school, I had assumed I was just going to continue working nationally, and that was going to be my career from that point forward. But I still had two kids that were in school. My oldest had graduated, and we put them in another local micro school here in town, and it wasn't quite what we were hoping for. It wasn't quite what they needed, and so I was going to bring both of them home to homeschool in January of 25. And then a friend of mine, her son was also at that micro school, and she was like, "Well, if you're going to homeschool yours, can we tag team and we'll homeschool the three of them together?" Well, tag teaming ended up being 11 kids in my living room starting in January of 25. Um,
Nice.
so I was like, "Well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this." So officially became Kainos Microschool, January of 25 with 11 kids. By August, we moved to a commercial space with 20 full-time kids and a staff of 3. By September, we had 25, and a staff of 4 and a waiting list of 28. So
Wow.
lots of growth and movement. We're moving from a 1,400 square foot facility in a strip mall and a former vape shop to an actual building, which is super
I love
exciting.
that. Okay.
And we're hoping to have 40 students next fall. I just hired my fifth staff member, and so we're growing, and good things are happening, and just super excited about the movement. Still working statewide, not so much nationally anymore, although I am still connected with some national networks, but still trying to build out the Indiana network and of grassroots
Yeah.
microschools. So yeah,
Wow. Wow. There's a lot there. Okay.
there's a lot
So
there.
you just really, yeah, but it's, this basically family,
Yep.
starting with like, just like, what kind of experience do we want to have as a family,
Yeah.
right? What kind of,
Yeah.
how do we want to raise our kids, right? And I
Yep.
think that's like, for me, one of the themes maybe of these conversations, but just of my learnings over 15, 20 years is like, man, you just can't, we can't separate like raising kids from
Yeah.
educating kids. Like
Yep.
it's the same thing. And the idea that like an institution would have them for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week just to do academics
Yeah.
when the education of the child is like so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that schools that all of that has, but Kainos has only been going. I mean, that's so you've got a lot of history leading up to this, but now it's kind of like this is this manifestation of the journey you've been on,
Yep.
and now it seems like it's sort of like your title track on the album is
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or seminal work here is kind of
Yep.
coming to the
The
front. So that's
culmination
very
of
cool.
all the years of experiences. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. So okay, so you're growing quickly. You've been going just for a little over a year. Growth anticipated into next year. What
Hmm.
what does it look like at Kainos? Like you're wrapping up a year, you're about to move, maybe you have ideas about how, I mean, if you're anything like our school, like every year we're tweaking and
Yep.
changing, like we're, like what worked, what didn't work, what are we going to do
Yeah.
differently? So, but what is I walk into Kainos, tell me a little about the setup. Is it full time? Is it part
Yeah.
time? Are people there all the time? If I
Yeah.
walk in, what am I seeing
What
on
are you
any
seeing?
given
Yeah.
day?
Yeah, so we have full-time options. We also have part-time options, just half days. And then we are next fall we'll be adding a 2-day hybrid program. We also offer homeschool like drop-in classes, writing instruction, things like that. So we kind of have built our program based on what the community needs. And the biggest need was a full-time comprehensive program. So that's like the kind of like meat of our program here. The potatoes would be like, the part-time and the hybrid and the homeschool drop-in classes. We do offer a lot of homeschool support, so consultation, and we have a free curriculum closet that's donation based, so homeschool families can donate curriculum, and then families can come and take whatever they need for free, which is an
Hmm.
incredible program for our community. But kind of the core of what we do is kind of a mix of, I call it like homeschooling on steroids almost. The transition to homeschooling to what we do now was really seamless for my family because basically what I was doing with my 3 kids translated really easily to, 20 kids. So
Hmm.
what you'll see is in the morning is kind of our core academic time. We use a lot of homeschool curriculum. Kids are kind of working at their own pace and at their own level. So we might have a 9-year-old who's maybe doing third grade math, but maybe reading at a seventh or eighth grade level. And so we're really customizing their education pathway based on their needs and their abilities and their interests. So we don't really, I actually just had to change it on my website because one of the things is we tell parents like we don't have grades. We have, 9-year-olds or we have 14-year-olds, or we'll have like high school age kids, but not necessarily like ninth graders. We have 20,
Yeah.
this year we had 25 kids, second through 12th grade, all in one classroom. Um, Yet my website was saying that we are served first through 12th grade. And I was like, no, we don't do that. So we don't really necessarily classify our kids by grades. It's more by their ability or their interests. Kids are kind of working independently in the morning, and then we're acting more as one-on-one tutors and mentors at that point. Um, we're really like they have this, they love it. These planner pages that are basically like their checklist of their work for the week. And they have to master everything that they're learning before they move to the next lesson. So it is really a lot of us just sitting shoulder to shoulder with kids at our desk, helping them on concepts that they're stuck or helping them make corrections, listening to their reading, having, conversations about the things that they're learning. And we're we find that a lot of our kids who struggle with executive functioning really thrive with that checklist. They love that checklist. It gives them
Hmm.
just enough kind of agency to choose what they want to do and when they want to do it, but it also is like highly structured and it holds them accountable and they can see the progress that they're making. So they really have to figure out their time management and their priorities with, our guidance. And so our morning times are actually really, really quiet. Um, you mentioned middle school. The highest demographic of kids that I have are middle school boys that are all ADHD and profoundly dyslexic. So you would think that they're kind of bouncing off the walls, and they're really not. The morning is really intensely focused, and they do really, really well, and they love our morning times, which to me as a kind of typical learner, I'm like, oh, that sounds horrible, but these kids really just thrive in what we provide. Our afternoons, though, because we have mostly middle school boys, are a lot more interactive. So we do a lot of project-based learning. Next year, we're adding in, I was going to call it Genius Hour. I stole it from Nevada School of Inquiry. If you know them, they're amazing out in Las
Okay.
Vegas. Um, that's not my idea. Totally stole it from them. We were going to call it Genius Hour. And then my 14-year-old was like, no, we need to call it side questing. So we're doing side quests next year where kids get to choose something that they want to learn, and then they'll work on that skill or that concept over 9 weeks and then present it every 9 weeks in a showcase. So we're super excited to kind of add in that interest-based learning where kids can kind of choose something that they're interested in. It can be anything. Um, so that's Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 2:30, and then Fridays are half days just because we're so heavy on our planning individually, for 20 something kids takes a lot of time planning and things. But we do, yeah, like I said, we provide that full-time comprehensive education. We have a couple part-time options, a homeschool hybrid, which is just 2 days doing the things that homeschool families don't want to do. So hands-on science experiments, hands-on art, writing instruction, the things that homeschool families are kind of like, I don't know that I want to get the glitter out or, things at home. So we provide those things for the homeschool kids. And then we just kind of have drop-in writing classes and things for homeschool families that they can pick and choose, what their family needs and pay for it and jump in. So lots of different options based on what the community needs, basically.
Very cool. Thank you for that. So for the full-time folks, because this is, I mean, as an operations person, these are
Hmm.
some of the questions that I'm always wondering, even though it's not necessarily the theme of these
Yeah.
conversations. But for your full-time families, they are satisfying their compulsory schooling
Yeah.
requirement by being enrolled at your school. You're like a
Yep.
legal private school as far as
Yep.
Indiana is concerned. Okay.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
then co-enrollment, part-time options for homeschoolers that retain their homeschool status.
Yes. Yep. Yeah,
Cool.
when I first opened, I had always said, again, never, I was never going to do something. I said that I was never going to become accredited. And we were part of the first pilot program for middle states. So now we're officially
Yeah.
accredited. So in the state of Indiana, we're an accredited non-public school, which is super exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been talked to some of the middle states and WASC folks about the work they're doing with microschools. It's really cool. So,
Yeah.
um, okay, so tell me, I want to know a little bit like more about what learning looks like in your program. One question I've been asking folks is like when something really good is happening in your program, like how do you know and what does it look like and feel like? Because you mentioned the morning times are typically really focused and quiet, which is
Hmm.
great. I mean, it there's always like days where sometimes it just feels like the gears are grinding and we're
Yep.
just kind of like this
Yep.
like the energy's off and this is
Yep.
funky and we're just trying to
Yep.
get through this, and then there's other days where it feels like you're walking into a jazz ensemble and like everything's just kind of like we're making magic here. So like what does it really look like when it's just like this is our program, like kind of in fifth gear, really
Yeah.
really blowing.
It's really is I those days are my favorite. The days that we're just kind of locked in and things are running smoothly are obviously my favorite days. Sometimes I just sit at my desk and I'll just listen and you hear audiobooks going because again, we have a bunch of dyslexic kids who really struggle and need the audio piece. You'll hear the
Mm.
audiobooks going, you'll hear, their pages shuffling. You'll hear the little fidgets and things going as kids are messing with their fidgets. We intentionally like set up our classroom so each kid has their desk, but then they also have a tub with all of their work and everything in it, and that's intentionally like on a shelf across the room, so they have to be getting up and moving throughout as they're switching subjects and things, and then they have to come and turn their work in when they finish it. So there's just constant like movement and hum. But the kids are really like they're in the mornings they're like locked in, they're working. I really love when, we have some kids that will come and ask for help, multiple times every morning. And those are my favorite because it's like, not only are we like checking in on like, okay, do you know how to do this math concept or whatever, but it's more like, hey, I really like your shirt today. Or, "Hey, why did you do your hair like that today? Like, that's an interesting hairstyle. So it really gives
Mm.
that time to kind of just build that relationship as well. We check them in every morning, and so we'll kind of go through their checklist with them and help them prioritize what needs to be done. And It's just a really great time to kind of build that rapport with them, build that community, build that relationship with them. Um, we do a lot of tracking with, we use the iReady just, 3 times a year with the assessment and things. And, as with any tool, it's not perfect. And honestly, we don't really care about the scores and how they do. It's just kind of gives us like an indicator of where they're at, and then we help them to set goals. So some of our favorite things are like when the kids, especially after that middle of the year assessment, when the kids are like, "Yes, I was going to work on vocabulary this semester, and I did it, and look at how much my vocabulary improved." And we're like, "Yes, you did." We white out all of the grade levels and the numbers so that they don't actually see their scores. They just see that their line went up or down. And so we're not like, yeah, and you're still like 3 years behind, because we don't care about that. You're making progress, right? Like that's the
Right,
most
right.
exciting
Because you're
thing to
probably
see.
also 3 years ahead in some sort of other
Yes.
intelligence or
Yes.
capability that this is not going to measure. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, it's just super exciting when kids get to see the progress that they're making, even if it's not at like the standard level that they should be. Like, who says that? We don't care about that,
Hmm.
like who sets that standard?
Yeah.
Not us. We don't care. So those types of things are really exciting. The other thing that's really interesting is we've seen a lot of growth, and this is the stuff I think that you're trying to capture, is the growth that we're seeing in the kids that's not like academic or really like easily trackable.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that the test score is, or the
yeah,
the iReady stuff is like an indicator, but like all the stuff outside of that. So like
yeah,
what's something about how learning happens in your environment that maybe people in conventional schools might not really understand, or that is happening outside of that, like
yeah.
iReady indicator line or whatever.
So
Yeah.
I'll share two stories fairly quickly. One student we had come to us this year, going into seventh grade, a boy coming from public school, and very, very smart. Like this kid could, like the way that his brain works, he can assemble anything on the face of the earth. He could
Mhm.
explain the mechanics of every moving thing, like just ridiculous. Um, but reading at probably like a kindergarten grade level, going into
Mhm.
seventh grade. And the last school year, his mom had told me that she had spent most of the time at the school. She's working a full time job, but had to spend most of her time at the school, just basically advocating for him to get the help that he needs, get the support that he needs. And the school system basically said, like, they're not going to teach him how to read anymore because he's going into seventh grade, and now they need to shift to, oh, well, he can use audiobooks or he can use speech to text. And we heard that and we were like, wait, what? Like, why wouldn't you continue to try to help him to read? Well, beyond the reading, he was having all sorts of behavior issues and things because he was starting to believe that he was a lost cause. They're not going to teach me to read anymore because I just can't read, and I'll never be able to read.
Mhm.
And his love for learning was really like dying. Like the light in his eyes was starting to go out, and his parents were just like at that point just kind of desperate for any sort of help. And so when he first started with us, he would literally come into the school, and any work that we would have him do, he would just start, literally just like start screaming, um, and just having like full blown meltdowns. And we were like, oh man, we don't know what we're gonna do with this kid. And rather than removing him or kicking him out or calling his mom and making her come pick him up, we would pull him aside and be like, all right, let's talk. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And what it came down to is he just didn't like what we were doing. Okay, well, let's change that. And as the year progressed, he became less angry. He would come in and he'd have this little like look in his eye, and he'd pull out a little trinket from his pocket and he'd be like, here, I brought this for you. At one point, he made me a little like candle in like a Grey Poupon jar that he had just like made at home and brought in as a little gift for me. And
What did you do to change? What did you do? Because it sounds like most of the kids are doing the same. They're they're
yeah,
choo- they're choosing pace and maybe some choice about how they go about their kind of
hmm
like core academic stuff in the morning. But like, what changes did you make for him?
we backed off
That
academically. We backed off.
hmm
Like we were like, here's a kid that has experienced some significant educational trauma from his previous
right,
environment. And the most important thing right now is not to teach this kid how to read. It's not to teach this kid how to do math. It's to like let his nervous system reset, let his mind
right,
and his heart reset, help him to know that he's seen, he's loved, he's known, he's heard. He can have a voice here, whereas before he didn't have any voice in his learning at all. And we'll listen to him. Now we'll push him, we'll continue to push him to try and do the hard things, but this kid isn't going to learn how to read when he's not feeling safe. He's not going to learn how to
yeah,
do math when he's not feeling heard and seen. And so for us, it was just like, well, with the parents' permission and with their knowledge, like we're going to back off on reading, we're going to back off on math, and we're just going to invest in the relationship with him. And we're going to let him know that he's loved and he's known and he's capable and he has dignity and he has worth and he has value. And
yeah,
then we'll start reintroducing those things. And that's what happened. By the end of the school year, he's doing a full load of work and he's doing it joyfully without screaming, without meltdowns, without anything. So like just the freedom to kind of be able to back off when we need to,
right,
because the most important thing isn't the academic, it's the student in front of us who's dying,
yeah,
doing kind of that mental and emotional triage is more important than teaching him how to read. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
This theme's come up in so many of the conversations. I mean, every micro school has their own like way of approaching learning and academics and pedagogy and all that, but there's this theme of just like less is more, and you have to like work. You're dealing with human beings, and like the
Yep.
psychological development of the child is like you can't put other skills into
No.
that container if it's not secure and
Yep.
expanded yet. So yeah, that's another great example of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the other one that I'll share just again very quickly is we have a high school student that on her third iReady assessment, she made consistent progress throughout the school year, and then her third assessment, she regressed significantly. And looking at that data, we were like, wait, what? What is this? We're like, no, like she's done so well. This is not accurate. And then we took a step back and started thinking about her as a whole person. And she had just experienced the loss of a grandparent. She's struggling with some anxiety in terms of like us moving to a new space and some of the classrooms shifting around, things like that. Um, and she had just gotten her driver's license as well. So, there that big life change there. And so what we sat down with her and we were like, listen, don't let this discourage you. What this tells us is actually that like maybe you're struggling with some things as a human being. And like, what do you need? How can we help you? Do you need to talk about, your grandparent who just passed away? Do you want to talk about what's going on next year? What can we do to kind of help reassure you? And so just talking through those things with her, like the test score wasn't an accurate indicator of her academic performance, and quite honestly, like
Mm-hmm.
it didn't really we don't really care about that. Like that was more telling to us that her as a human being, she was struggling and needed just some extra attention and care. um
Mm,
and so I'll be curious to see how she does in the fall, but again, if those scores come back low, like I don't think it's actually academics. I think it's just that she's also going to need some tenderness and some care as a human being before we even reintroduce those academic pieces. So, um,
Oh, it's yeah. I mean, you think about that and you extrapolate it out to like. I mean, I don't follow this stuff too much, but I think my
yeah,
understanding is like our national reading and math scores are just continuing to get worse.
yep,
I think that's the story,
yep,
but I like if you think about that situation and then kind of extrapolate, it's like, oh well, it might not be because you know kids are somehow our brains are less capable of learning math and reading
right.
or whatever, but the first story, like there's kids that are just like, hey, I don't like being here, I don't feel safe here, I'm
Mm-hmm,
like no one really understands me here, I don't care about this.
mm-hmm,
This is disconnected from my reality, and I'm just like I'm got a PDA at minor or major
yep,
levels. And then the second story is like, oh, like life is just traumatic for me. So,
yeah,
and the levels of that people are experiencing, are rising in different ways. So it's just this whole adventure in missing the point in
yeah,
terms of like, those metrics and trying to just reduce the entire experience of education to like math and reading scores. And it's like
yes,
how much gets flattened and gets just completely demolished
yeah,
in the process.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well,
Yeah,
that's cool that you use that as a signal to go deeper into something else, not a okay, well, let's have you stay 2 hours after school and just
yeah,
really
yeah,
really grind on this,
yeah.
like
Or let's change our curriculum, or yeah, like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's silly.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Cool. Well, this is really great. I'll ask you maybe one or two more questions that I ask folks towards the end of these conversations because yeah, just to kind of get everyone's take on it. But mm, yeah, so I'll phrase it this way. There's two questions, and you can
yeah.
kind of answer however it makes sense to you. But the dominant story about learning in our world is that it's measurable and that it happens in classrooms. So
Mm.
if that's not your story, then
Hmm.
what's your story? What story about learning would you tell instead? Or thinking about it another way, like what do you think the world needs to understand about how kids actually learn?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's I think it's both of those questions. I think the answer is both of those. I think before we can even start addressing academic learning, we have to be addressing the social emotional learning of children. We have to view children as human beings rather than numbers or test scores or academic achievement. And we have to recognize the humanity in all of it. Like our kids are human beings, our families that we're serving are families with backgrounds and histories and their own, issues, and we can't do any academic learning until those relationships are really fully developed. And so while academic, at least for us at Kainos, the academic piece is important, and we do push kids to do hard things. Um, and sometimes things that they don't want to do academically, like they don't want to do long division. I get it. Like it's boring and it's long. I get it. Um, Sometimes we just have to do things that we don't want to do, like as human beings. But also like for as much as I care that you can do long division, I don't care if you can do long division if your life is falling apart. And
Mm,
so I think giving children like the dignity that they deserve, the recognition that they deserve as human beings, because I would rather the learning make them better human beings than mastering multiplication and division and algebra and I would rather that they care about their peers and respect other people, um because we live in a world that like information is at our fingertips at this point, right? Like, so they have to be able to problem solve, they have to be able to interact with each other, um they have to know how to find the information that they need. And then they have to know what to do with that information once they find it. Um, and I think when we develop their character and when we help them develop as human beings into good human beings, they'll be able to figure out what to do with that information, how to access it, you know? So
Mhm.
I also think, coming from my own journey with childhood trauma and religious trauma and all the things, um, knowing how to process through it so you can break the cycles is also important. And so partnering with parents in how they're raising their children, I never step in and say, this is what you need to do with your kid, but I'll say, like, this is what we're noticing. And here are some conversations that we're having that you can enter into. And if there are other things that you want us to address, like, please let us know, you know? So
Yeah.
helping parents who I don't know about you, but I don't know what I'm doing as a parent. I have 3 kids. I have graduated two. I have 2 adult kids and I still don't know what I'm doing, you know? Um, so having somebody to kind of walk alongside you as you're trying to figure out the education piece, but also like developing these human beings that are growing and learning, um, feels much less lonely. So really kind of looking at the family unit as a whole, um, and the child as a whole to kind of get them to be good human beings. That's the most important thing to me in terms of learning. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Very well said. Thank you, Jill Haskins from Kainos Microschool, for
Yeah.
joining me for this conversation and sharing a bit more about what learning looks like in your microschool environment.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.